Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the country session focused on investors from the United States. We hope that this session will showcase you with a few opportunities for investment in Sri Lanka.
Good day to all of you. We are now ready to begin the USA country session of the Sri Lanka Investment Forum 2021. I would like to thank His Excellency Ravinath Ariasinghe, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to United States of America, Mr. Martin Kelly, Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of United States of America in Sri Lanka, and also the panelists and the participants for taking the time to attend the USA country session of the Sri Lanka Investment Forum. First item is the welcome address by His Excellency Ravinath Ariasinghe, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to the United States of America. His Excellency Ravinath Ariasinghe assumed duties on 1st December 2020. His letter of credence as Ambassador of Sri Lanka to the United States of America was formally accepted by President Donald Trump on 23rd December 2020. Having joined the Sri Lanka Foreign Services in 1988, Ambassador Ariasinghe is presently the senior most officer in the services. Prior to his current appointment, he was the Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka, serving from 2018 to August 2020 under 3 political administrations. With that note, I would like to warmly welcome His Excellency to make this address.
Very good afternoon to all of you participating in this session. I particularly am glad to be connecting with you from the United States and want to congratulate all those involved in the coordination of this investment forum and for also dedicating a session in it to discuss Sri Lanka-US trends. Now, the US is an important investment partner for Sri Lanka since 1978 and currently is the 10th largest investor in Sri Lanka. According to the latest data, the US companies have invested in 133 projects, which accounts to nearly 500 million US dollars. The most popular sectors of investment by the US companies are apparel and textiles, software development, tourism and leisure, infrastructure, sail cover and accessories, light engineering and electronic products. We must also take note that with the US being Sri Lanka's main export destination, accounting for 26% of Sri Lanka's exports, there is always the potential for greater investment with buyback and arrangements which involves the US as well. Now, according to statistics, while the US is the second largest investor in the world with FDI outflows amounting to $125 billion, however, the volume of US investment in Sri Lanka in comparison to other countries has been at a low level. This is far below the volume compared to capacity, capability, and size of US investors. Recent trends in the US is that US companies are moving out of some countries where they are looking for new homes, and Sri Lanka obviously is a good destination for them to come. It has been forecasted that US dollars 150 billion worth of businesses are shifting over the next 5 years. And it would be a great achievement if Sri Lanka could attract some of this investment. Now, as we speak, this, one would say, is not the ideal time where people are looking for investing because we are all so preoccupied with surviving right now through the COVID crisis. I want to take this opportunity to thank the US government for the support which it has provided Sri Lanka in many ways in our trying to overcome this difficulty. But it has also afforded opportunities for friends to be noted and for friendships to blossom, and the ability of the US to help in some sectors where there is relevance to Sri Lanka's furtherance of its economy has been a silver lining in what might be this dark cloud. And as you all are aware, there are many advantages for investors when investing in Sri Lanka. Some of the companies which have benefited from our concessions and facilities are Star Governments, Pearson's Lanka, America IFRID Lanka, Northern Manufacturers, AmSafe Bridgeport, which have many success stories to tell you. As far as the investments and benefits are concerned, I'm sure this conference has dealt with that, and the BOI would be in a better position to give you an update on this facility. All I want to say is that we have now identified the ICT BPO, education, infrastructure, tourism and leisure, agriculture, food processing, electric and electronic products, light engineering, healthcare and pharmaceuticals as the major sectors that has potential for US investment. Despite the difficult times, we are pleased to note that we have been able to attract from the US significant investors such as Wes Edens, who has made himself and his team have made visits to Sri Lanka and are discussing several projects of potential investment, and I understand will be pursuing with those projects and their interest in Sri Lanka. It is such flagships coming and making Sri Lanka a potential addition to their wide range of investment markets that will make Sri Lanka more and more attractive to the US investor. At the same time, the port city development is also significant, because in the port city, where investors will be given new opportunities, and where there will be a level playing field for everybody, it is important that Sri Lanka give and provide the opportunity for greater investment from the US. We have to understand the bottlenecks which presently might be faced by investors coming to Sri Lanka and address those in a country-specific manner. Now, in this task, we have had the good fortune over the past few months in trying to, rather than respond to each investor coming, to try to go out from the mission and seek those who are wanting to invest in Sri Lanka. And we have, through what we have introduced as the Overseas Sri Lankan Network, been able to try to make linkages with particularly Sri Lankan Americans who are interested in investing, but more so who have a knowledge of Sri Lanka and are able to attract others who might be interested in investing. So we are hoping that the Sri Lankan Americans could play their part in helping the embassy and the US Embassy in Sri Lanka in trying to connect those folks who are capable of investing in Sri Lanka to do so, and do so in significant numbers than it is at present. I believe that for Sri Lankans and others who want to invest but who do not have the time to nurture those investments, the Securities and Stock Exchange provides a viable opportunity to also get involved in Sri Lanka and engage the economy of Sri Lanka, which is post-COVID surely going to take off in a very significant manner. So it is at an interesting juncture that this investment seminar is taking place, and I wish you a very good session where you would be able to understand the bottlenecks and address the possibilities and give the incentives why an investor from the United States must come to Sri Lanka. I think the recent Trade Shifts report of AmCham is a useful document which should lend direction to some of these processes, and I am sure that it will provide a backdrop within which this session would be beneficial. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that valuable insight. Next item is the keynote address by Martin Kelly, Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of the United States of America in Sri Lanka. Martin Kelly is a career member of the Senior Foreign Services who took up his duties as Deputy Chief of Mission at the US Embassy in Colombo in August 2019. In that capacity, he supports the ambassador's policy engagement with Sri Lanka and the Maldives, including Indo-Pacific strategy, and runs the internal operations of an embassy with 500 employees. Martin previously served as Deputy Consul General at the US Consulate General in Dubai from 2016 to 2019, where he supported our expanding relationship with the United Arab Emirates and promoted US trade and counter-proliferation goals. We now move on to the address by the Martin Kelly, Charge d'Affaires of the United States of America Embassy in Sri Lanka.
Good evening from Colombo. Thank you for allowing me to participate virtually in this forum. And let me, at the outset, send warm greetings to Ambassador Ravi Aryasinha, who is participating in this event from the Sri Lankan Embassy in Washington, D.C. Ravi has been a strong proponent of U.S. investment and has helped to open doors and provide valuable insights on investment opportunities in Sri Lanka. I also want to thank the U.S. executives and company representatives who are joining us for this program. Promoting trade and investment opportunities is one of our embassy's top priorities. It is a vital component of our efforts to encourage private sector-led development and to forge stronger ties between our people. Even as we live through these challenging times, there are real opportunities to be had. The Sri Lankan people, its democracy and business community, have proven their resilience time and again. Sri Lanka was among the first countries in the region to open its economy, accruing the highest standard of living and most advanced development indicators in South Asia. Over the last 70 years, the country has continued its transition from an agricultural commodity-based economy to become a world leader in textiles and apparel, a major exporter of IT and communication-related products and services, and, of course, a world-class destination for international tourists. Sri Lanka has also steadily upgraded its air, sea, and telecom infrastructure to position itself as a regional base of operations for technology and manufacturing with an eye to attracting investment. The pandemic has forced all of us, governments and businesses alike, to reevaluate global supply chains and logistics. Sri Lanka is taking the opportunity to adjust its economic footing and capitalize on potential restructuring of the global trading and financial systems. For example, the government has promoted pro-business policies, including tax benefits, to attract U.S. and other foreign direct investment. U.S. FDI into Sri Lanka was $13 million in 2020, bringing U.S. cumulative investment in the country to $274 million, mainly concentrated in tourism, real estate, ports, and telecommunications. And potential U.S. investors also see opportunities in franchising, IT services, renewables, and light manufacturing. However, despite those positive indicators, U.S. FDI figures have remained mostly flat over the last 5 years due to concerns about transparency and the regulatory framework. The government has pledged to address those issues, and I'm confident that once the pandemic subsides, concrete efforts will begin to improve ease of doing business and ensure a level playing field for U.S. investors. On the trade side, the U.S. is Sri Lanka's largest single country export market. Trade has been heavily weighted toward Sri Lanka, of course, but we remain optimistic that figures for both U.S. trade and investment will improve over the next few years. The U.S. government has long been supportive of Sri Lanka's efforts to broaden and modernize its economy. The U.S. and Sri Lanka have had a tax treaty in place since 1985 and a bilateral investment treaty since 1991. The U.S.-Sri Lanka Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, or TIFA, is our primary forum for discussing these issues bilaterally, and we look forward to holding the next round of TIFA discussions soon. The American Embassy provides commercial information for interested investors, advocacy for U.S. companies with projects or proposals, and the full range of U.S. commercial service programs to help companies enter specific sectors and to identify potential Sri Lankan partners. U.S. investors can also access several U.S. government options to help develop and finance large-scale infrastructure projects. For example, through such agencies as the Trade and Development Agency, USTDA, and the Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, among others. No question, the pandemic still remains the biggest obstacle to growth as it has for the last year and a half. But the United States is committed to leading the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. President Biden reaffirmed that commitment last week by announcing that the U.S. will provide 80 million doses of vaccine to support global needs by the end of June. And I am pleased to say that Sri Lanka was identified as one of the recipient countries of the first 7 million doses intended for South and Southeast Asia. In addition, the U.S., through a special support flight just last weekend, delivered a large quantity of essential medical equipment to support Sri Lanka in combating the current surge of cases. To date, the United States has contributed over $6 million in COVID assistance, in addition to in-kind donation of 200 portable ventilators that are being deployed across the island. Our overarching aim is to end the pandemic as quickly as possible. We are working together with our G7 partners, the EU, COVAX, and others in leading a multilateral effort to do just that. This forum is an important step on the road to economic recovery, and it presents a valuable opportunity for the government of Sri Lanka to work with and solicit feedback from U.S. and other foreign investors to redirect and re-energize the economy, and to enhance Sri Lanka's global competitiveness in a way that will improve the lives of all Sri Lankans. I wish you a successful investment forum and look forward to hearing the results. Thank you.
Now we move on to the next session, which is a macroeconomic update by Mrs. Rai Raymond of the AmCham, Sri Lanka. Rai is the General Manager, Head of Chamber of American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka. She is a transformational leader and a strategic communication specialist, counting over 20 years' experience in corporate communication, event management, media and compliance. Over to you, Rai.
Thank you, Dr. Ratnayaka. Excuse me. Ayubowan, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in this beautiful land or this beautiful earth that you're joining us from today. Let me start by thanking His Excellency Ambassador Ravinath Arya Singha, all the way in Washington, of course, Deputy Chief of Mission and Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of the USA here in Colombo, Mr. Martin Kelly. Thank you both for your warm and encouraging sentiments, gentlemen. It now falls to me to present you with a synopsized outlook of Sri Lanka's investment climate before I hand back over to Dr. Ratnayaka to lead you in an enlightening and informative session of the practical aspects of business with Sri Lanka. Let me briefly introduce the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, which will provide context to my presentation. The AmCham Sri Lanka, now reaching its 30th year in operation in Sri Lanka, is the only international business chamber operating here. And as a member of the United States Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Association of Asia Pacific AmChams, we operate under the aegis of the Embassy of the United States here in Colombo. AmChams across the globe, actually counting over 100, are comprised of member companies, being Fortune 500 and Forbes Top 50s, and of course the largest companies in the host countries as well. And our mandate and primary objects is to foster, encourage, and facilitate the development of bilateral trade, investment, and business relations between our two countries. It is in this backdrop that the co-organizers of the Sri Lanka Investment Forum, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Investment in Sri Lanka, and the Colombo Stock Exchange have kindly invited AmCham Sri Lanka to make this presentation today, and I gratefully acknowledge your invitation. Now, while I leave you on this screen, which is a collage of several of the 1,200 global brands and companies operating in Sri Lanka, all of these are members of AmCham Sri Lanka. Let me provide you some interesting information on Sri Lanka before we move on further. As their excellencies both speaking before me noted, Sri Lanka was among the first countries in the region to open its economy. And today it is proudly ranked second in the region for starting a business, second in the region for quality of infrastructure, second in South Asia in the Global Competitiveness Index, first in South Asia for human capital skills, first in South Asia for Human Development Index, first in South Asia for quality of life. It is ranked as the most peaceful country in South Asia. We are also ranked first in South Asia's literacy rate, second for compulsory secondary education enrollment in the region, and we boast the second largest SEMA pool in the world. We are a world leader in apparel manufacturing and considered one of the most ethical sourcing destinations for apparels. We are a major exporter of ICT products and services and are the fastest growing ICT hub in South Asia. And let's not forget that we are one of the world's most sought after tourism destinations, and our tea and spices such as the Ceylon cinnamon and pepper are world renowned. As the pearl of the Indian Ocean, as Sri Lanka, or Ceylon as she was known back when the term was actually coined, Sri Lanka's geographical location makes her a key air and sea hub, with just her proximity market reach, counting over 2.1 billion consumers across South Asia and East Africa alone. Let me take you into a bit more detail. Why Sri Lanka? So if you see the slide that I have presented here, it gives you several factors. If I run through them, Sri Lanka is home to over 1,200 foreign companies across multiple sectors, some of whose logos you saw in the previous slide. We're a founder member of the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. Sri Lanka has US GSP, EU GSP Plus, and other regional trade benefits of access approximately 1 to 1.2 billion consumers just in this alone. Sri Lanka is well reputed as an ethical manufacturing destination with high social and environmental compliance standards. Sri Lanka has access to proximity markets of over 2.1 billion consumers in South Asia and East Africa, and through FTAs with neighbors India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, which is over 2 billion in the region alone. Sri Lanka permits 100% repatriation of investment. So this includes dividend, fees, and capitals. Sri Lanka is geographically well situated on global shipping lines with over 33 major shipping lines, and we are one of the top 25 container ports in the world. We have the lowest power cost in South Asia, and this is according to the Jethro Survey Report 2020, I believe. We have world-class manufacturing and technical services, capabilities, and workplace standards, strong IP protection, fastest growing ICT hub in South Asia, as I mentioned previously, and of course the Colombo Port City, an international SEZ. Now, as I move on to the next slide, I'd like to acknowledge that yes, there have been certain issues related to stable regulatory and policy framework, Sri Lanka's ranking in the Ease of Doing Business Index, etc. However, the government is committed and determined to resolve these issues, and you will note that Sri Lanka has steadily, over the past 5 years, improved its ranking in the Global Ease of Doing Business Index and is currently at 99th position from 111th position in 2016. And this augurs absolutely well for the commitment of the government of Sri Lanka to improve and take heed and ensure that we change the various issues that would need development and change. Of course, also additionally, Sri Lanka is looking to unleash an absolute decade of growth and has identified certain specific thrust sectors in this endeavor. I do intend to list these out for you at the end of this presentation, but just to sort of recap or look in a nutshell at the reasons to invest in Sri Lanka. Let me move on to this next slide and explain it to you. So if we look at the investment climate, all key sectors are open to foreign investment. We have 100% foreign ownership is allowed, 100% repatriation is permitted, as I mentioned. If we look at tax incentives, we have attractive tax holidays ranging from 5 to 10 years, tax exemptions on agro farming, information technology, and export of services. Looking at the talent and education, we're ranked first in South Asia's literacy rate, second for compulsory secondary education enrollment in the region, and as I also mentioned before, we have the second largest SEMA pool in the world. Let's look at the ease of doing business. We're ranked second in the region for starting a business, second in the region for quality of infrastructure. If we look at market access, we have the GSP, GSP Plus, and which provides Sri Lanka with easy access to the European market, for instance, of over 500 million customers. Sri Lanka also has signed FTAs with both India and Pakistan, which means duty-free access to over 1.5 billion consumers in a proximity market. If you look at the quality of life and infrastructure, we're ranked as the most peaceful country in South Asia, first in South Asia for human development, and first in South Asia for the quality of life index. Take a look at location advantages. The Colombo port is among the top 25 world container ports according to the survey done in 2019. We have 33 major shipping lines calling at the Colombo port and 200 out of 603 flights departing to India weekly. Looking at competitiveness in productivity, we're ranked second in South Asia in the Global Competitiveness Index, first in South Asia for human capital skills as well. And that nutshell having been provided, let me just move on to a look at the investment climate and tax regimes. In terms of investment climate, all key sectors, as I said, are open to foreign investors. We have consistent policy environment covered by a 5-year window. Cabinet subcommittee has been appointed to fast-track investor facilitation. If you look at investment protection is guaranteed by the Constitution. There's a revamping of the BOI Act and an introduction of new SEC and Port City laws that are coming into play. Clear direction on national and economic priorities have been made. There's Strategic Development Projects Act with expanded scope and coverage which protects and invites investment. There's 100% foreign ownership which is allowed, 100% repatriation of earnings, dividend, fees and capital, also as I mentioned before, a simplified tax regime and attractive tax exemptions. Let me go further into detail when we're talking about the taxes. This slide will provide you with a sort of synopsized detailing which also provides what sectors and what sort of tax holidays are available. And you will see from this that many key sectors or thrust sectors as have been identified are very much a part of this. So as I promised earlier, I'm not going to read through the entire slide. I'm sure you have enough time to go through it. Let me just move on to the 6 thrust sectors that I mentioned, which have been identified for investment and development. So here it is. Under manufacturing, we have pharmaceuticals, high value added apparel, electronics and electricals. Under ICT, there's knowledge services, software development, IT training institutes and emerging technologies. Under hospitality and tourism, there's agro and ecotourism, adventure tourism and thrill tourism, luxury hotels and MICE tourism, of course. Agricultural and food processing, there's a lot to do with rubber and finished rubber goods, agri-processed foods and fisheries and seafood, which are a very large market right now. Under construction and infrastructure, We have railway systems, monorails, LRTs, and SkyTrains. Port and airport development are also very big, considering Sri Lanka's strategic location as a transshipment hub. And under other services, we have regional headquarters that can be moved in here, maritime and trade opportunities, and of course, universities and financial services. That's pretty much the end of the presentation slides I have for you. And I do hope that I have been able to provide you with some insight in a synopsized and yet informative manner, given the lateness of the hour for some of you participating here. But of course, my task would not be complete if I didn't make mention of the Colombo Port City Special Economic Zone. The CPC is, of course, an international business and services hub with specialized infrastructure and other facilities for promotion and facilitation of economic activity, including international trade, shipping, logistics operations, offshore banking and financial services, information technology and business process outsourcing, corporate headquartering operations, regional distribution operations, tourism, and other ancillary services. US FDI into Sri Lanka as at 2020 stands at $274 million US, primarily in industries such as tourism, real estate, ports and telecommunications, and currently investors also see opportunities in franchising, IT services, renewable energy and light manufacturing. In terms of trade, the USA is Sri Lanka's largest single country export market. And with the prevalent tax treaties, bilateral investment treaties, and the resumption soon, we hope, of the US GSP program, this is added impetus for US companies to strongly consider investing in Sri Lanka. As Mr. Kelly mentioned in his remarks, US investors can also access several US government options, such as the Trade Development Agency, the USTDA, and the Development Finance Corporation, the USDFC, among others, to help develop and finance large-scale infrastructure projects. Both Mr. Kelly and Ambassador Arya Singha also noted that this forum is an important step on the road to post-pandemic economic recovery, as this pandemic takes an unfathomable toll across the globe, with over 3.7 million deaths and countless millions affected in countless ways. I hope you will reach out to the organizers, the Sri Lanka Embassy in Washington, the US Embassy here in Colombo, or even us at AmTram Sri Lanka, and we'd be more than happy to assist you in any inquiries in investing in Sri Lanka. If all the information that you've heard thus far from myself, as well as the various other sessions and speakers, have not yet persuaded you sufficiently, then let me leave you with this thought. If you are seeking talented, qualified, competent, creative, passionate people who will continuously evolve, adapt, and innovate to nurture and grow your business, your brand, and your investment, then it is definitely this. In true Sri Lankan style, let me leave you with a greeting that is currently very apt and means, may you be blessed with long and healthy life. Ayubowan.
Thank you very much, Rai, for that very insightful presentation. We now move on to the main item of the agenda, which is the panel discussion. Before moving forward, I would like to set the stage by giving a brief outline of the US market. The USA is Sri Lanka's largest export market and accounted nearly US dollars 2.5 billion out of the total US dollars 9.9 billion exported out of Sri Lanka in year 2020 as a whole. This accounts for nearly 25% of Sri Lanka's total exports. Sri Lanka imported US dollars 354 million worth of goods in year 2020 from USA, creating a trade deficit in favor of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka also has received approximately US dollars 1.2 billion in lending from IMF since 2016, with a new disbursement of US dollars 164.1 million agreed upon May 2019, making one of the key supporters of the Sri Lanka's economic revival. United States has made substantial investment in agriculture, enterprise development, education, healthcare, energy, natural resources, humanitarian activities, and the biggest being apparel industry. Sri Lanka has signed free trade agreements with India, Pakistan, and Singapore. Sri Lanka is a member of the SAFTA and Asia Pacific Trade Agreement APTA. These FTAs facilitate the companies operating in Sri Lanka to access the regional markets using Sri Lanka as a gateway. With that note, I would like to move to the panel discussion. Firstly, I would like to give an introduction of our eminent panelists today. Mr. Manesh Fernando. Manesh is the current General Manager of Hilton Colombo. With the expansion of Hiltons in Sri Lanka, he takes on the role of Area General Manager, Sri Lanka, effective October 2019. Manesh's career in hospitality has included 24 years with Hilton worldwide chains in Sri Lanka, Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand. He has wide experience in different types of properties, including hotels, resorts, airport hotels, and luxury apartments. Next is Lakshita Dharmavansha. Lakshita currently functions as the General Manager and Country Head of Avery Dennison Lanka Limited since 2015. He is also a Director of Avery Dennison Sri Lanka. Lakshita has 23 years industry expertise in sales, marketing, and customer service. He is a fellow member of CIM UK, possesses MBA in Business Management, HR and Marketing from Manipal University, India, Diploma in Business Administration, NKS Business School, Norway, and a certified trainer from DDI Singapore, Miller Hyman, USA. Next is Sanjay Chandraratna. Sanjay is Director Marketing at American Neeford Lanka Private Limited. Sanjay is a certified marketer of CIM UK, a certified management accountant, CMA Australia, with an MBA from University of Wales. He has 20 years of experience in sales and marketing in media and textiles. Let's now move on to hear their story about investments in Sri Lanka. My first question to you, Manesh. Hilton Colombo has been operating in Sri Lanka over 3 decades, over 30 years. Can you explain in brief the history of your operations in Sri Lanka and the future outlook for Hilton?
Thanks, Dr. Asanka. We started off in 1987. We were invited by the then president of Sri Lanka as it opened the economy, as Rai was talking about it. And from then onwards, the Hilton brand has been in Sri Lanka non-stop for the last 34 years. And we've expanded. Currently, we operate 3, and we are building another 2 Hiltons. And there is a whole heap of inquiries with people trying to connect with us to move further ahead in the hospitality industry with the Hilton brand on there. So going back to Rai's amazing presentation, I think the proof is in the pudding, and it's us guys who have been here for 34 years, enjoying the benefits of the ups, yes, and some downs as well, be it the regulatory environment, be it the strengths of Sri Lanka where it is, and we are the proof of all what she said. So we are not looking back, and we are looking forward with lots of hope. Even my hotel, which is the Hilton Colombo, we're investing a lot of money in the rooms, in the infrastructure, looking at when the lockdowns are finished. Thank you, Dr. Asanka.
Very nice to hear that positive note. My next question is to Lakshita. As a subsidiary of Avery Dennison Corporation, you established operation in Sri Lanka in 1997, focusing on providing end-to-end solutions for some of the most exciting brands, prominent retailers, and state-of-the-art manufacturers in apparel and footwear industry. Also, you have grown in Sri Lanka through acquisitions. Can you give a background of your operations in Sri Lanka and serving the regional markets requirements where Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Dr. Asanka. So we, as you said, we've been in Sri Lanka for more than 20 years now. I mean, we've seen our business growing year on year. And as you said, through acquisition as well as organic growth. So we started predominantly catering into apparel market. Today we are catering into other segments, footwear and glove business and so on. So we see Sri Lanka is a really good place comparatively to rest of the countries in the region to grow our business due to various factors, ease of doing business, logistics, and also people, and also the processes and the support we get, particularly from BOI. Our business is growing despite all the COVID challenges. We are looking at very heavy investments over the next couple of years, expanding our business into different sectors, looking at diversification into new areas such as glove business is a big operation in Sri Lanka, and also new products we are looking at, particularly targeting the future, recycle polybags, organic waste polybags, and also craft paper bags replacing plastic carrier bags. And we are also looking at smart products, which will enable apparel and footwear retail.
About accessing the regional markets, Lakshita, per se, if I may ask?
Accessing the regional market, we see Sri Lanka is going to play a very significant role as a hub because of the ease of doing business and our logistic capability. So we are looking at actually targeting South Asia and some countries in East Africa, Middle East, as well as East Asia. So our plans are that we should use Sri Lanka as the hub for manufacturing in most of the new products and distribution into other markets, because we can reach those markets within short lead time, and our capabilities in technology and the infrastructure will enable us to do so.
Thank you. Next question to you, Sanjay. A&E has been in operation in Sri Lanka for over 20 years, and today one of the leading manufacturers of industrial and consumer sewing thread, embroidery thread, and technical textiles. What are the key competitive advantages that attracted your company and helps your operation in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Asanka. A&E Sri Lanka investing into Sri Lanka, or any investor 20 years ago investing into Sri Lanka, saw many benefits, a few of which I will run you through. Sri Lanka has a recognition of in the global arena for ethical business practices that, coupled with dependability and long-lasting relationships with trade partners and customers, place Sri Lanka ahead of other competing countries within the region. The Sri Lanka apparel industry boasts of a highly skilled workforce, which produce high-end garments for the international industry, and our local apparel industry offer sophisticated solutions for the global apparel industry, and that worked well for A&E, as A&E is well known for offering innovative solutions and borders on the periphery of commodity. ANE also globally is known for its strong EHS and sustainability business practices, which is complemented by the Sri Lanka apparel industry. Sri Lanka apparel industry adhere strictly to international labor practices and high ethical operations. That has actually put Sri Lanka to the apparel hub it is today. Also, bilateral and multilateral trade agreements have helped boost the apparel and export industry and aided the procurement of raw material into the country. On top of that, the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka and the apparel body, the JAF, has sustained the apparel industry in Sri Lanka to attract investment even today. ANE today under Elevate Textiles is looking at investment in the Northeast, Eravu to be precise, under the guidance of the BOI for future expansion.
Okay. Thank you, Sanjay. Manish, I come back to you. Hotel industry has a direct correlation to the tourism sector. Leaving aside the current setback tourism industry is facing due to COVID pandemic, can you explain your views on the regulatory environment governing the tourism industry in Sri Lanka?
Thanks, Dr. Asanka. If you break the regulatory environment into, maybe to simplify it into three areas, you could take the investor, we take the staff who are working there, and then you've got the community. Okay? So if you got the investor, you got Rai, who was talking about it at the start, about the MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, the constitution, and people in Sri Lanka do respect the law. Okay? If you take accounting standards, we practice Sarbanes-Oxley, top American standards, okay? And there's no compromise. So CIMA, we have the second highest out of UK in terms of accounting people. So we have a very strong governance on that side, okay? If you take the staff, our people are very, very emancipated, okay? They can talk up. They have the full benefits of the law with the International Labour Organization standards, okay? And we have an equal partnership where people are looked at very positively. So for Hilton, this is nothing new, but this is the reality in Sri Lanka. We have a very strong labour union in our hotel, which is very, very positive actually, because they will talk things which make sense, you listen, and you take action. If you look at the community, the ESG goals, if you look at the environmental, social governance side, very strong once again, because 3,000 years of history, we didn't just get here by destroying everything, we've looked it after. We have a few blips here and there, bit of issues. If you look at, if you want to start a hotel, there's a strong environmental impact assessment survey you need to do. Once you operate the hotel, they will visit your hotel and check it inside out in terms of affluence, in terms of how the working environment of the staff is, okay? So if you look at all these three sides, it is well covered and pretty strong. And looking at the apparel sector, talking about ethical garments, this is another success story. Thank you, Dr. Asanka.
Thank you, Manish. Lakshita, this is to you. Being in the manufacturing industry and that too supplying to highly competitive industries like apparel and shoes, can you comment on the logistic service capabilities and the standard of services available out of Sri Lanka?
Okay, thank you, Asanka. So I think in our industry, what matters is how fast you can react to the consumer demand. So let me explain a few factors why Sri Lanka is really strong in this aspect. Number one is the process we have in customs, in import-exports. I think they are the most easiest and simplest processes in the region. So we see that we don't have to wait for hours and days to get through things, and we can very fast react to our consumers' requirement from the process side. And in terms of regulation, it's the same. If you come in the BOI, as a BOI company, your process is even much more easier. Then Sri Lanka is a small island. So the business today is decentralized, not limited to Colombo or Sabah. But our road network is getting improved every day. We are seeing more and more expressways coming up. So reaching the north and south and east is going to be much faster and shorter. So you can reach the hub faster in your distribution channel, unlike any other country, days and weeks trucking to reach a port. We don't have that problem. And Sri Lanka also has the most efficient and largest port in the region. As Ray mentioned, 25th largest in the region. So our import-export is much faster and efficient comparatively to any other country. And also we have few other ports around the country, so it is not an issue. In terms of air traffic, we see we are very fast connected to China or Europe or US because Sri Lanka is used as a transit hub by most of the carriers. So we don't see a problem in managing our regional reach from Colombo. Last but not least, and we see the quality of people and attitude makes it much more easier and simpler and faster.
Lovely. Thank you, Lakshita. Sanjay, Southeast Asia has become the Asia's epicenter of the United States-China great power competition. This is no secret. And at the same time, there are several other players are also competing there, including Japan, India, and also Europe. I think His Excellency Rabinath R. Singh also mentioned about the fact that about $5 billion worth of trade is supposed to shift. In this backdrop, how do you see Sri Lanka can possibly benefit out of this trade shift which is due to take place?
Yes, Sri Lanka definitely has an edge over other competing nations in the region. In a very simple sense, it can be for geographical location, literacy rates in the country, trade agreements, or even that it's least impact to natural disasters. Sri Lanka can definitely benefit by increased trade and increased export. If the country is ready to meet that increased demand, increased volume of business that will come in, and of course ensure that the raw material is also aligned to that increased demand. Certain industries like apparel, tea, rubber, fisheries, etc. will certainly stand to benefit by such an increase in trade. And of course, with that increase in demand, you will have vertical integration, for example, on the increase, specifically for industries like apparel and textiles. Also, certain untapped geographical sites in Sri Lanka, for example, the Port City project will draw investors from around the globe for hub office concept, which will give employment to many in Sri Lanka, real estate, etc. The Port City project also being a green city will draw further investment in green-based initiatives. To a lesser extent, the BOI commencing 260-acre fabric park in the northeast also will invite investors to a part of the country that requires development and, of course, requires new employment opportunities. Also, with the increase of consumer markets being on the rise, Sri Lanka can capitalize on trade activities in the region. Sri Lanka can position itself as a strong maritime hub, giving access to trading partners to the emerging economies like India, and it's already established partnership with China will help give rise to the
Okay.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Right. I have one last question which has two parts. Anyone can take it, including even Rai. How do you see doing business in Sri Lanka, particularly compared to the FCPA standards that US companies demands? That's one. And do you also see Sri Lanka as a safe place to do business when compared with protecting the intellectual property? Yep, Manish.
Let me take the FCPA part. So we are, as everyone knows, 102-year-old American company, and every 6 months, all of my staff have to go through online training and go through all those rules and sign off, and I have to sign off for all of them that they've all read it. Okay, so we operate with full American standards in Sri Lanka, and there has been no issue. Right, so I answered that one. Second one, I'll leave it to.
Right. Someone who would like to take the IP question?
An AmCham perspective, and by that what I mean is that a perspective of all companies or US companies based in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
I would have to agree with what Manish said. Both the FCPA requirements and regulations, as well as in terms of IP protection, are something that are considered very, very important. I know that all our members take it very seriously. I know that we have regular programs and workshops and initiatives that continue to kind of update our membership on what is going on in terms of both the FCPA and IP protection. And I believe that what Manish said was spot on. In terms of ensuring those regulatory practices, I think all companies operating here in Sri Lanka are very much on par with the standards necessary in the USA. Also in terms of IP protection, that is one of our benefits, the fact that we have a very strong IP protection system and process.
Thank you very much, Rai.
Pleasure.
That brings us to the end of our panel discussion. And I'm sure the participants would have got a real good idea about the potential that Sri Lanka provides and the facilities that it has, and why Sri Lanka should be looked at as your next place for investment. And finally, I would like to thank His Excellency Ravinath Arisinghe, Sri Lankan Ambassador to the United States of America, Mr. Martin Kelly, Charge d'Affaires of U.S. Embassy in Sri Lanka, our eminent panelist, and also Rai from the AmCham, and most importantly, the participants. And I must also congratulate the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and Colombo Stock Exchange for their efforts in coming together to organize the Sri Lanka Investment Forum 2021. Have a nice day.